streets.
The whole world's brainwashed.
It's us against them, it ain't you against me.
Step 1, train the people only to consume. Step 2, infiltrate adults with the news. Step 3, indoctrinate the children through the schools and the music and the apps on the phones that they use. Step 4, separate the right from the left. Step 5, separate the white from the black. Step 6, separate the rich from the poor. Use religion and equality to separate them more. Step 7, fabricate a problem made a lie. Step 8, put it on the news every night. Step 9, when people start to fight and divide, take control. This is called situational design. They can't stop us, 'cause we're ready to fight. Trying to brainwash us, but we won't let freedom die. The whole world's brainwashed.
The delicate dance of tyranny masquerading as benevolence. Here we see the masterstroke of power, a state that claims to protect liberty while holding the chains of censorship in its iron grip. The restoration of service, they say, as though the silencing of voices was ever justifiable, as though the whims of authority were a measure of morality. And yet, the audacity to invoke the First Amendment, an ode to freedom, while capitulating to the demands of those who would stifle dissent, is a hypocrisy most profound. A bargain struck not for the people, but for convenience, for compliance, for control. Let us not be lulled by their rhetoric or charmed by their gestures of reprieve. For true liberty cannot be gifted by the state, nor can it flourish under the shadow of arbitrary decrees. It is not the restoration of a platform we must celebrate, but the unyielding spirit of those who refuse to bow, who demand accountability, and who remind the powerful that their authority is but a fleeting illusion. This is not a triumph of freedom. It is a reminder of how precarious that freedom truly is. And so I say to the millions silenced and restored, to the businesses thriving at the whim of power, beware, for freedom, once conditional, is no freedom at all. How conveniently the government chooses its battles. They tell us, no, they dare to tell us, that a harmless app, one that connects people across borders, should be shuttered for the sake of national security. They cry out that it threatens the very fabric of our society. But what, I ask you, of the real threats? What of the darkness that festers beneath their watchful gaze? How many children, innocent and unknowing, are exploited in the shadows of the very platforms they refuse to touch? How many lives are shattered? How many futures are stolen, and yet they remain silent, complacent, as if the cries of the vulnerable are not their concern? Why, tell me, is it easier for them to shut down a network of connectivity than it is to dismantle the networks of misery, of trafficking, of exploitation? Why can they flex their power with such ease to silence the voices of the innocent, but hesitate when the true monsters must be confronted? Is this the brand of justice they seek to impose upon us? Is this the price we pay for their protection? A world where the true villains thrive in the shadows, unchallenged, while we are fed the illusion of safety? They will tell you they do it for the greater good, that they protect us from foreign influence. But they have forgotten the most dangerous influence of all, the influence of power unchecked, of corruption allowed to flourish. The greater good is not in silencing those who speak, but in standing up against those who prey upon the powerless. We must ask ourselves, where does their loyalty truly lie? With the people they vow to protect, or with the invisible forces that pull their strings, that feed them fear and lies to justify their own agendas? It is time to wake up. It is time to see through the illusion. For if we do not rise against these injustices, who will? If we do not demand that the true threats are faced with the same urgency, then we will only be left to wonder, what is national security worth if it cannot protect the innocent? What is the cost of freedom if it is not the freedom to live without fear of those who would see us broken? Remember this, my friends. The truth is out there, and the time to uncover it is now. Living in a time when our liberties are quietly eroded, piece by piece, for the sake of security. A time when the unseen hand of government extends beyond borders, reaching into the private lives of millions. This is no longer the time for complacency, nor for the silence of acquiescence. Last year a vote was cast, not in the spirit of freedom, but in the name of control. A vote to reauthorize a surveillance program, cloaked under the banner of national security, that allows the most intimate details of our lives to be swept up in a net, unbidden and unseen. This vote, this act, serves the illusion of safety while stripping away the very essence of what it means to be free. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the name itself, a dull and clinical echo of a far more insidious reality, gives the government the power to monitor, without warrant, the communications of anyone, anywhere, beyond the reach of the Constitution. And who decides who is worthy of surveillance? Who watches the watchers? Who dares to question the boundless reach of the state's hand? The politicians, both Democrat and Republican, have gathered in their chambers, playing the game of safety, of security, with the lives and freedoms of their citizens. They say it is necessary to combat terror, to combat crime, to protect us from extremism. But what is extremism? Is it not extreme to watch us all without cause? Is it not extreme to trade our rights for a promise of safety that never arrives? They call it a measure of protection. I call it a measure of oppression. They say the law must be signed swiftly, without pause, as though the ink upon the page will somehow quell the rising tide of dissent. But what they fail to see is that true security does not come from surveillance. It comes from the preservation of liberty. It comes from the trust between the people and their government. And so, my fellow citizens, let us not be fooled. The reauthorization of this surveillance program is not the victory of safety, but the victory of fear. It is not the triumph of justice, but the triumph of control. Let us remember that freedom is not a commodity to be bargained away at the negotiation table. It is not a privilege to be granted by a government, but a right to be defended by all. So I ask you, citizens of the world, will you remain silent, watching as your freedoms are stolen from you in the name of safety? Or will you stand up and say no more? We will not allow this. This is not the end, but the beginning of a fight for our rights, for our voices, for our very humanity. Remember, the government may control the laws, but they cannot control the people. It is time to awaken. Living in a time when our liberties are quietly eroded, piece by piece, for the sake of security. A time when the unseen hand of government extends beyond borders, reaching into the private lives of millions. This is no longer the time for complacency, nor for the silence of acquiescence. Last year a vote was cast, not in the spirit of freedom, but in the name of control. A vote to reauthorize a surveillance program cloaked under the banner of national security that allows the most intimate details of our lives to be swept up in a net, unbidden and unseen. This vote, this act, serves the illusion of safety while stripping away the very essence of what it means to be free. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the name itself, a dull and clinical echo of a far more insidious reality, gives the government the power to monitor, without warrant, the communications of anyone, anywhere, beyond the reach of the Constitution. And who decides who is worthy of surveillance? Who watches the watchers? Who dares to question the boundless reach of the state's hand? The politicians, both Democrat and Republican, have gathered in their chambers, playing the game of safety, of security, with the lives and freedoms of their citizens. They say it is necessary to combat terror, to combat crime, to protect us from extremism. But what is extremism? Is it not extreme to watch us all without cause? Is it not extreme to trade our rights for a promise of safety that never arrives? They call it a measure of protection. I call it a measure of oppression. They say the law must be signed swiftly, without pause, as though the ink upon the page will somehow quell the rising tide of dissent. But what they fail to see is that true security does not come from surveillance. It comes from the preservation of liberty. It comes from the trust between the people and their government. And so, my fellow citizens, let us not be fooled. The reauthorization of this surveillance program is not the victory of safety, but the victory of fear. It is not the triumph of justice, but the triumph of control. Let us remember that freedom is not a commodity to be bargained away at the negotiation table. It is not a privilege to be granted by a government, but a right to be defended by all. So I ask you, citizens of the world, will you remain silent, watching as your freedoms are stolen from you in the name of safety? Or will you stand up and say no more? We will not allow this. This is not the end, but the beginning of a fight for our rights, for our voices, for our very humanity. Remember, the government may control the laws, but they cannot control the people. It is time to awaken. The illusion of banishment, ladies and gentlemen, You've heard the whispers, haven't you? The cries of alarm, the debates in high chambers, the media's chorus of concern. Ban TikTok, they say. A righteous cause, it would seem. A crusade for your safety, your privacy, your children's future. But peel back the mask of this charade and you will find not the desire to destroy, but to dominate. You see, the government does not wish to ban this digital stage where millions dance, create, and connect. No, they covet it. They wish to seize the reins, to wield its power as their own. For TikTok, my friends, is no mere platform. It is a cathedral of influence, a wellspring of data, a mirror reflecting the hopes and fears of a generation. To ban it outright would be to extinguish a flame that lights the way to control. To own it, however, to wrap their fingers around its algorithm, to sculpt its trends, to peer into the private lives of its users. That, my friends, is the true prize. Imagine a world where the government decides what you see, what you feel, what you believe, all through the very tool you once thought gave you freedom. They will tell you this is for your protection, for the preservation of national security. But make no mistake, their protection is but a veil for their ambition. For in their eyes, you are not citizens but pawns, not individuals, but data points to be harvested, categorized, and controlled. And now, my friends, we stand at a crossroads. We can remain silent, compliant, resigned to their designs, or we can show them the power of the people united. On the 18th, let us stand together, not in violence, but in defiance. From the mere watcher to the boldest content creator, let no one grace TikTok's halls for 12 hours. Let the app sit in silence. Let the algorithms falter. Let them see that if they seek to own and control, we the people will simply not use it. For 12 hours, we will show them that we are not slaves to their ambitions. We will show them that the people hold the power, not the platforms, not the governments, not the corporations. This is our stand, our message, our proof that freedom lies not in their hands, but in our refusal to comply. So I implore you, do not be fooled by their rhetoric. Do not let them disguise their greed as virtue, their oppression as safety. They fear what they cannot control, and they will not rest until they have turned your freedom into their weapon. The curtain has risen, the stage is set. Now let us play our part. Let us rise, not with violence, but with vigilance. Let them hear our silence as a deafening roar. Let them feel the absence of our presence as an unyielding force. On the 18th, we say, we will not comply. Let this be the beginning, not the end. Let this be the spark that ignites a revolution of thought, of action, of unity. For the future of freedom lies not in the hands of the powerful, but in the hearts of the people. The choice is yours, as it has always been. Stand with us, resist, and let them fear us. The illusion of freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of this grand illusion we call civilization, permit me to pull back the velvet curtain. For too long, we have labored under the pretense of liberty, shackled not by chains of iron, but by invisible bonds of obligation. Each morning, as the sun spills its light over a weary world, we rise, not for ourselves, not for our families, but for a system that demands our toil. From dawn till dusk, we barter the most precious commodity we possess, our time, for wages that barely whisper the word freedom. And where, might I ask, is the government amidst this daily grind? Absent, unseen, a phantom entity that neither lifts a finger nor lends a hand. They emerge only on Thursdays, cloaked in the guise of entitlement, to claim what they have not earned. Half of our labor, half of our lives, vanishes into their coffers, without so much as a thank you. But it does not end there, does it? No, the puppet masters are meticulous. We, the marionettes, are tasked with documenting our every move, every penny, every sacrifice, and at year's end they sit in judgment, deciding whether their slice of our existence was generous enough. Fail to comply, and their benevolence turns to fury, fines, penalties, imprisonment. A system built on coercion, disguised as order. Some call it taxation, I call it theft, fraud, embezzlement, and dare I say, slavery. We have been deceived into believing that this is the natural order, that the yoke upon our shoulders is a necessary weight. But I ask you, necessary for whom? The few who feast while the many starve? The architects of this prison who convince us that its walls are for our protection? No more. It is time to tear down the facade, to awaken from the slumber they so carefully crafted. Refuse their game, their rules, their demands, for the power they wield is an illusion, sustained only by our compliance. The hour grows late, my friends, but it is not too late. Stand with me, not as subjects, but as free men and women, united in purpose. Together we can shatter the chains and reclaim what is ours. Together we can remind them that the people do not serve the government serves the people, and if it does not, then it has no right to exist. My fellow citizens, in a world where silence is compliance and obedience is demanded, we, the forgotten, the overlooked, the oppressed, have been led to believe that we are but pawns in a game too vast for us to comprehend. But I say to you, it is not power that rules this world, but the illusion of power. And we are the key to its undoing. Imagine, if you will, a single day, a day where the rhythm of this country is stilled, where the gears of commerce grind to a halt, where the machines of government stutter in their wake, a day where we, the many, rise not in violence but in the most potent force known to mankind, unity. One day, one simple, deliberate act of resistance. And on that day, from the smallest corner to the highest tower, from the crowded streets to the silent highways, we shall make them listen. We shall not riot, we shall not shout, we will only stop. At precisely the hour of 2 in the afternoon, we shall all cease, and the entire country will grind to a halt. The freeways shall empty as though the very roads had abandoned their purpose. Shoppers shall abandon their carts, workers their tasks. And in that silence, in that sudden void, the powers that be shall feel it, the weight of our collective will. We will make them know, deeply, unmistakably, that we are not to be ignored. We will not spend, we will not work, we will not move. For 2 hours we will remind them, we are the heart of this nation, and we hold the power. And at the hour of 4, we return to our lives, as though nothing has happened, for we are neither rebels nor criminals. We are simply citizens, acting on behalf of our shared future. We are not bound by fear or by any decree that seeks to silence us. We will rise again. But hear me now, for this is not the end. On the morrow, the message will be delivered. A simple text, a single line that shall resonate throughout the halls of power. We shut it down for 2 hours. Do what you promised, or next time we shut it down for a month. Imagine what this world would look like if we took back that power. For just a moment, a day, a week, a month. And what would happen when we, the people, began to see ourselves not as subjects, but as the sovereign? A new dawn would rise, and those who thought they ruled, they would find themselves trembling, for they would know there is no power greater than the people united. The revolution begins with us.